Hey, hockey fans, T-Boss is 13-3 here with top shelf guests. Front office staff of the new NAHL franchise, Minnesota Mallards, including owner Charles Bailey and GM AJ Bucchino. This episode is sponsored by Riverside Bike and Skate, Raleigh's Coach Club, Northwoods Therapy Associates, Market & Johnson, and Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, which has been committed to the healthcare needs of patients in western Wisconsin since 1954. The orthopedic surgeons and athletic trainers serve many area schools in the Chippewa Valley. Mogi.
Hey, it's a beautiful summer day. We are at the headquarters for Travel Net Solutions in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, one of Charles' numerous companies. So, we thank you guys for taking your time today to sit down and talk some hockey with us and tune us into the Minnesota Mallards.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys being here.
We're talking about a brand new franchise. So we want to get the storybook of how this developed and what it takes to get a franchise going. But let's talk a little bit about your backgrounds. Charles, are you a hockey lover? Did you play when you were growing up?
When I was younger, we grew up on, I grew up on welfare. I was an at-risk youth. So I spent a lot of time, it was kind of the oldest kid of the family. I've got two brothers and a sister. And so it's kind of the father figure of the family. And so I did, my mom worked hard, couple different jobs, still went to school and was able to have us play. I think my brother played a couple of years, but I was able to play 1 year of hockey. We'd head down to the back rink behind the rink in Richmond, Wisconsin and play a lot of tip in and things like that. So we loved the game. It's just, we never had the money to play it. So as I got older and we had a little bit more dollars, I thought it would be a great sport for the kids to get into. So that's really, I loved it at an early age. We played a lot of it, never got to play organized. But then as we got older, all my kids have played at a higher level. So that's my shtick on hockey.
AJ, you got a little bit different story.
Yeah, a little bit. My father, I'm from out east. My father, Joe Bucchino, he worked in the NHL for about 30 years, and then he worked in the minors for about 20 years. So he was in the game for quite some time. That's his identity. So I was definitely born into it. Like many kids, they wanted to be like their dad. He brought me to the rink quite a bit when I was young as the stick boy, and I got to learn the language and be around it. So you fall in love with the game. And then we moved around quite a bit because of his job in pro hockey. So I was just blessed to have a lot of experience to be able to play hockey anywhere, in the South and Canada and the Northeast of the United States. So that's how I was introduced to it. And then, I was a prep school boy out east. I played junior hockey. I went to two colleges, D1 and D3, and then a cup of coffee in the minors. And then I really have never had another job outside of hockey and or sports. So here I am.
So as a stick boy for a professional hockey team, I don't know, what are you, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever?
Yep.
And these are grown men? Correct. What's the craziest thing you ever saw one of those guys pull?
What am I allowed to say?
Well,
what should I not say?
Well, we're going to leave that up to you.
Yeah.
I know you're a very respected adult and very professional gentleman. So maybe you can share something with us afterwards. But is there anything PG you could share with us now?
Absolutely. No, yeah. And I will say, I think, when you're with the camaraderie of hockey guys, they're very respectful. So they knew I was a 10-year-old walking around, and they also knew that my dad was the GM. So they were very good to me. So I guess the coolest stuff that I saw with them was their routines. I think, guys that were playing in the 90s, it's a different routine than now. So just seeing, a lot of the players or goalies, and their routines getting ready to play compared to what I did or what kids do now. So that's kind of the most, fun and things that came to my mind, was being able to just watch their behaviors and learn from them.
So as a young, impressionable kid, did you change how you did things based on what you saw some of those guys do in the locker room?
That's actually a blessing and a curse, because when you try to do things that work for someone really good, it doesn't always work for you. But absolutely, I took a lot of their habits and actions and tried to incorporate it. I think I was blessed to be around them talking and the coaches talking and learning that way without actually knowing I was learning, and then just the way they think. So I think I was lucky to be a little ahead of what are they thinking on the other side when I'm trying to make that team, I felt I learned a lot that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Charles, obviously, with a business owner and the experience you've had in the market, you've got the ideas and probably the skill to start a brand new business. And I would call the NAHL a business and a new team a business. What skills did you need, or what did you need to present to the NAHL to get a team?
Well, I think anytime, the league is a very credible league, and they want new owners. They want, whether that be someone buying in or if it's someone that's going to get a new franchise, they want to make sure they're credible as well. So, the league isn't credible, isn't what it is without good owners. And so I think that was one of the first things. I thought it was going to be a fairly quick process, actually, to get a team in the North American Hockey League. But it actually did take time, even with all my success in business. I think, going back to when I was younger, that was the fire that drove me to be very competitive. And I really developed a love for business in college. So, all those experiences I have, I built a website design development company out of my dorm room when I was in college. You know what I mean? But besides that, I was a football player. Couldn't afford hockey, so I went into football and was really successful in the game of football, and then that translated right into business. So I think, all the experiences I had, and culminating with what we did with TravelNet Solutions, obviously I've seen the good, bad, and ugly, and I've had a lot of success, but failures as well. And so having those things really set me up, as far as coming into this didn't really seem like a big undertaking. There's been a lot of minutia, and there's a lot of things that have to be done. And then also, I wouldn't have done it without AJ Bucchino here. AJ was someone I've known for a lot of years. He coached my daughter. She was a goalie, and her favorite coach, by the way. So, but I wouldn't have done it because AJ had that experience, and he had the connections, and he had done it with Minnesota Magicians. So it made it easier for me to get comfortable around the business model and what was going to be expected. But I think it was at the time when we came in, it would have probably been a little easier, but they were at a point where they had 6 teams in the Central Division. They didn't want to have an odd number. And so I think that's what we were trying to work with Mark Frankenfield on. He was really excited about us, and he was really excited about what we wanted to do. It was just the timing, making sure it was right, not only for him, the league, and the executive board, but making sure that it made sense. And at the time, I think we worked for like 8 months, and we didn't get that. We weren't able to secure the new franchise. And so we kind of just put it on the back burner thinking, well, maybe this isn't going to happen. But once they got Watertown live, which was a town they really wanted to see get a team and get things squared away over there. So once they had Watertown locked in for this fall, for the 24-25 season, then then there was an opening, and we were already pre-approved. We already had good plans, and I had already done a dog and pony show for the executive board and the league. So they had already were familiar with me and AJ and what we wanted to do. So it was really actually a quick process. It went from 0 to 60 in 30 days. It was literally like a month and a half, and we had the team. I think it was that quick. So, when the timing's right, we could move fast. And again, because of my prior, past experiences, past successes, and the position that I'm in, and also the knowledge that AJ had, and the months of work that we put in together of kind of getting our hands around it and getting our business plan down, it just made it, we were ready to go. So it went really quick, really easy, and it feels like it's longer than we've been in, we've been established. It feels like it's 6 months, but it's only been a few months.
Correct.
So, but that's kind of the roundabout way. That's kind of my answer to that question.
So it's interesting when you were talking, AJ, about listening to your dad and listening to that. You were around the players, but also listening to your dad as a GM. Yep. What skills do you bring? Obviously you're a player, but you had that experience too, and now you're in the GM chair. So how'd you get there? Yeah, no. Good question. Well, I'm still learning, my dad has a lot of experience. How did I get there? Well,
I was involved in hockey right away. So after a couple of years in the minors, I got right involved in the skill development space. So I represented myself, and then I had some former business partners, and we, had camps, clinics, private training in that space. And that space helped me create relationships with parents, coaches, and people in organizations that would, leverage your career, right? So, it led me to being a high school head coach for 3 years at Lakeville South. It led me to other opportunities. It led me to meet the owners of the Minnesota Magicians. So at the time, fast forwarding, the Magicians owners offered me a part-time role, then a full-time role, but I did have ownership of a skill development company and a business partner who's not Charles, who is a former couple guys. So I had responsibilities to them. So we made a unique relationship work. I was able to dive into the Magicians full time, and then I was there for 5 years, and 4 years of that I wore many hats. So I had that experience in the league. Then the organization was sold. Then for 2 years I was out of it, but still in hockey, re-engaged to a skill development company, brief AD at Breakaway Academy. For a K through 8 school there with Brink and Snuggerud. Sure. So I spent a little time there and just kind of for 2-3 years danced around, re-engaged with Charles, where he hired me for a consultant for his sports app. And that's how we started these conversations. I did not seek to get back into the league. Charles is aware of that, but we were talking, and it excited me again. So long story short, here we are. We made fast decisions. So I feel my personality and the relationship with the owner really is important with where your role is in a junior team. It's not, you can't just be a head coach. You can't just be a GM. There's many ways the junior team works. So I feel my personality and skills complement our vision and things that we have going on, as well as giving other people like Terry and empowering them to fulfill their dreams and their passions. So I think my skill set is probably meant for management. And even though we all love being on the ice as a player or coach, which it's not out of my system, I think that it would be best for the company if I'm in that management role, supporting the owner, Charles, and then helping the hockey operations staff. So, yeah.
So, Charles, did you have a list of management that you were looking at, or did you just automatically go to AJ, that you knew that was the guy?
Well, that's a story I'll just go in real quick about 8 years ago, I was coaching high school hockey. And so one of the things that I was looking at was how do I connect with these young, high school boys? How can I do that? And so I ended up bringing my tablet on the ice, filming different drills and whatnot, bringing them over on the ice and being able to show them feedback. And it just seemed like the light bulb would go off. And so that really led me 6 years ago to building this really first only, there's nothing like it, platform called Sports Gravy. And it's an ability to be able to give visual feedback back to athletes, whether it be coaches, mom or dad can give feedback to athletes. And through that visual feedback, they can watch it once, watch it many times, but ultimately really move the needle and get better. So a reason I teed that up is because at the time I had talked, when me and AJ re-engaged, I brought him aboard to I wanted him to sell the product, but because the product wasn't quite ready, he ended up pivoting and helping me out test the product and QA the product. So for 7 months about that, you were testing the product and getting to know the product, and actually made some good, hey, we should have a recruiting section in here. And so he adds some ideas to the product, but also tested the product and really became familiar with it. And that's where he brought up the junior team. So he had already had the experience at high school. He had already had the experience as a head coach of the Magicians, also head coach, GM. So he had already been there, done that. When he presented it to me, I thought this could be another way to give back to athletes, another way to help kids. Another way to, you know what I mean? There was a lot of different factors. Another way to build relationships for sports gravy to be implemented. So when I started reading, like the old Ben Franklin clothes, write the pros and cons down, there was just a lot of pros that I liked. And AJ was the guy. I wouldn't have done it without him. And I had a certain amount of trust and experience with them. He was also helping train my boys and my kids and kind of advising the boys on their career and what they were doing. So it was just a natural fit. There was no other options. Either I did it with AJ or I didn't do it, because I had a lot of things going on. But when the opportunity presented itself, AJ was the guy, and we wouldn't be where we're at today with the Mallards without AJ. It's that teaming up with my ability from business side and the skills I have with technology and everything, and what I've done from that standpoint, and then pairing it up with his knowledge and experience, I think was just a match made in heaven.
What a guy.
Is it young 20 or young teenager? I'm thinking, if I'm listening to this, I want to come play for the Mallards right now.
I want to play for the Mallards too. I don't know if I have any eligibility left, but yeah, never mind.
Probably not.
So, guys, what kind of experiences from your playing and coaching days do you think you're going to be able to share with your Mallard players this year and beyond?
Yeah, well, I had similar path to a lot of the aspiring guys that want to play for us. I did play junior hockey, and I played college, and then I had a cup of coffee in pro. So, junior hockey is definitely the new bridge for probably 99% of the global hockey player that wants to play in college, right? It's very rare that you will not play juniors and go right to a Division I or Division III school. So with that said, I think that, just like anybody's experiences being a parent or being in law enforcement or a principal or whatever that may be, you learned what to do, what not to do, what you would do differently, try to share that with athletes. But I think the biggest separator for me, compared to other junior manager, GMs or coaches, is I've had a lot of engagement with the youth level. I've had a lot of engagement with parents, with the paying customer, the paying parent. And I've trained the majority of my life kids 18 and younger. So I feel that my experiences with them, both mentally and physically, and when they get to junior hockey, whether they're living at home and playing for a local team, such as potential Minnesota kids with the Mallards, or they're relocating here from, for example, Canada, I've seen collective habits, good and bad, that, okay, when you get to junior hockey, here's what you've experienced in youth hockey. Here's what's real. Here's what's not. Here's how I can help you be more ready. Cause a lot of kids are not, even though they think they are, or their parents think they are.
Right.
So I feel that my experiences in the youth rinks may help the players coming here, whether I share it with Charles and he implements some things, or I share it with the coaches who are doing the coaching and putting together that development model. I think that could shed some light, that way. That's where I feel my separator is with many, junior employees, junior hockey employees.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's just expanding on that from my perspective. I've seen it from all different. I've been on the side of the coach's side from high school on down. I've seen it from an administration side. I've also seen it from a parent side. So I think that the bottom line is, if you're going to play at a high level, it's not just the kid has to be committed, the parents have to be committed, and it's a lot of commitment on both sides. So, from that standpoint, having that visibility, having that experience helps me, I feel. From a business standpoint, or anything that I've done, if I put my mind to something, I'm going to be successful. It's just that simple. And I pass this on to others. It doesn't matter if it's business. It doesn't matter if it's hunting. And I want to improve a property, and I want to kill a Boone and Crockett buck, which I've done numerous times. But, again, if I want to go ahead and do something, it's just a mindset. So that's what really led me to building the app. Like, I'm extremely passionate about sports gravy. And being able to move the needle and develop kids both on the ice, off the ice, on the field, off the field. It doesn't matter. So when I did a lot of coaching coming up and coaching my kids and coaching their peers on teams, it wasn't just good enough to just be out there. When I volunteered, it was all in. We were going for a state championship. We were going for, you know what I mean? Which we won multiple in softball, hockey. But ultimately, what I wanted to show these kids is you can be anything you want to be. If you're willing to put the work in, if you're willing to sacrifice, you can be successful. Look at me. I don't come from much, and I've had a lot of success. I want these kids to think the same thing. Whether they've maybe haven't gotten a fair shake or they have or they haven't, doesn't matter. If you put your mind to it and you stick with it, you'll be successful. So these are some of the things that I've had success with, but this is what we want to teach at the Mallards, and we want them to be successful, not only hockey players, but we want to see them be champions and successful in life.
Yeah.
And that's where I think people get really passionate about, because that's something near and dear to our heart. And, I know AJ believes in that.
Yeah. And just to feed off that quickly is, the Sports Gravy app is going to be a tool that we can have our coaches use, for the visual feedback and all that. But again, my second time around, we want this to truly be a development location for the motivated athlete. Motivate is the key word.
Yeah.
You gotta want it. And, you guys know that even in men's league right now, if you just take the day off and have a couple beers, it just might go okay. But if you know what I mean, if you actually go try to get the puck hard and I'm going to pretend again, you're going to get it. So we want motivated athletes. That's number one. If you're motivated, number two is we're going to give you a platform to succeed. And that's a development regimen on the ice. Extra resources to come in along with our hockey staff. Extra resources for mental awareness, not just mental health, but having mental tools. So when you get on the 7-hour bus ride and then have to play a game in front of 10 scouts, you know how to be ready. So those kinds of things that Charles is passionate about, I'm passionate about, and Terry, our head coach, who will embrace that and has his own ideas. This is, the second time around for me. So to try to provide that readiness, is just something we're really looking forward to. So Sports Gravy and the teaching points that I'm pointing out are the kind of the collective piece for the players' experience at the Mallards.
And that's just another tool. Yeah. I mean, I did a stint in the Army as a combat engineer. So, it was with the National Guard. And I think just seeing that is you go through basic training, you go through advanced training. We're going to pour ourselves in from ownership to the leadership, front office leadership, to our coaches, to our scouts, everyone in between, volunteers. We're going to pour ourselves into the Minnesota Mallards and into these kids. These kids then have to make sure they're ready with the right mindset to receive that, right? So I think I don't think if a kid comes here and they're ready for something like that to fully commit, and that's why I bring up basic train. You're in. You're not going home. So you're that's kind of how we're looking at it. You know what I mean? The kids get a lot of development, out at the national development team. Why not us go ahead, do the similar type thing and pour ourselves into these kids? But these kids have to want to receive it and want to be there and take it up another notch and be serious about what they want to do. And I like this quote: everyone wants to win. Most people don't know what it takes to win. Yeah. And that's the facts in life. So again, these kids that come to us, they need to make sure they're ready to win. And that doesn't mean just winning on the ice as a team. It's winning both as a team, as an individual, and making sure they're developing. So I know we went back and forth on that one, but that one's really a great question.
That's important. I think your kids need to know that, front and center. When you get them on the rink, it's like, here, boys, here's what we're going to expect.
We've had a lot of conversations about how we're going to set the culture, so you could see us kind of getting into that one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's no doubt in my mind that if you're looking at a kid, they're going to know right up front what to expect. There's not going to be any secrets.
Right. And you know what? Another quote is great, and I've heard this from a sports psychologist, is take the mystery out for the player. So take the mystery out for the player, because the unknown is what creates anxiety on an athlete. Right. So we want to give them all the information and say, here you go. Now it's up to you to execute it. Right. So that's a good point and a good question.
And that is a fantastic, that's fantastic, because I know we've been talking a lot is, let's have a path for someone. There's way too much time and energy and money that get into this, and then you wonder why parents get a little nervous or a little crazy, right? They're investing a lot, both as parents, but their kids are sacrificing, investing. Just want to make sure to give kids a path. And if they don't do it, then they can be accountable for that. I'm big on 3 words: accountability, transparency, and then ultimately trust. If you have the transparency and you're honest, authentic, and honest with a kid, right, and they don't take the feedback, that's on them.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It's not on the coaching staff. So that's where it's a two-way street. A partnership, definition of partnership is always a win-win. They have to win, and so do we. And so bringing that together. But I like that quote is a great quote because, again, I think there's just too much, unknown does create a lot of, anxiety. And I guess AJ told my boys this 3 years ago. You're going to be most successful if you're in a good place with your mind. If you're happy where you're at and you're in a good place. But, and again, there's nothing wrong with adversity. It makes all of us, into the people we are. But too much of it is not a good thing. And I think you got a little too much of that happening with how sports have been, such a big thing in the youth all the way up and how much time and money we're all spending. I think we need to start thinking about that a little bit more. So there isn't as much anxiety because that can lead to mental health. That can lead to a lot of different things. And we have to understand we're still dealing with young men, young women, and they're still growing. So we got to take that into equation when we're coaching them, leading them and whatnot, if we really truly want to move the needle and make the world a better place.
So one variable that's been kind of thrust into the equation of hockey and the kids as they get going and move on to higher and higher levels. It used to be you're dealing with the parents, you're dealing with the player, but now you have advisors that a lot of the kids have. So what do you guys think advisors have brought to the landscape that is positive, and what kinds of things do you see that maybe aren't so positive?
I'll let AJ take that.
Well, it is a lucrative part of the business now, and it is here, and I think it's probably here to stay for a long time. Loaded question. I will keep it shorter than our last one. As you can see, we're passionate about our culture there, but I feel that if the advisor advises with accurate and honest information, it is a very important piece. Okay. And could be an important role for the athlete, especially for parents that are completely blind to hockey or, just need the right information, don't know where to find it. So with that said, yes, what seems to be a trend now, even with the magicians and being out of it for a couple of years and coming back, I've realized that everything goes through the advisor. That just seems to be a collective trend now, is if I contact the player or the parent or the coach, somehow that advisor is going to contact me and I'm going to have to have a conversation with them about the player based on what we want to talk about. So they're a part of the equation. My advice to parents is an advisor should know every rule of every league and every detail of every team. They should also know the personality and the trends of different teams and organizations. And they should also know the personality of the parent and player they're advising. People may disagree, but I believe that happiness in the person fits in the environment. And when that is known, the advisor can help push them in the right areas for success. I hope that makes sense. So that's my experience with advisors. But yeah, they are a part of the equation. Yeah. I think there's good ones and I think there's bad ones.
Just like anything, you've got the sour grape every once in a while. Yeah. AJ, you've got an extensive resume from the coaching levels, but I think you're selling yourself a little short. You did play at a higher level. I mean, you played collegiate. I don't care if it's a cup of coffee at the pro level, even a donut. I mean, you made it there, okay?
Yeah, you did.
So
appreciate that.
With your experience and knowledge, how did you go about picking your head coach? And tell our listeners who that guy is.
Yep, great question. Terry Watt, he's our head coach. Charles and I had to assign him some things today, but he will eventually, I'm sure, be with you. But he's a good man. So the story on how I know him is Like a lot of relationships, trust is important. So Terry is from Canada. He also played the game and got to the professional level. He actually worked for my father. So currently my father's a general manager in the EHL, Eastern Hockey League out east, which is at the tier 3 level outside of junior hockey. So my father was a GM of a team called the Protect Ducks, who were sold, and now it's actually the New Jersey Bears. Terry was the head coach there, and he worked for my father directly. So indirectly and directly, I watched Terry. I heard feedback from my dad. I heard feedback from players. I watched his work ethic, really, and his passion, because junior hockey is an absolute full times 10 role for a head coach. It is a all day, every day job if you want to be that good. And that's what he does. He puts the energy into it. So with his experiences with my father in the EHL, and then him getting hired to the NCDC, which was another league last year in Wilkes-Barre, just kind of watched him a little bit with his performance. Kind of already knew his personality and work ethic, then watched his performance a little bit. He was a strategic hire for 2 reasons. Number one, he has to blend with the personality of leadership. If you haven't noticed, I'm big into the psychology of communicating. Yeah. When grown men are all in a room, there's a lot of egos. Okay. I'm one of them. So we all have to make sure we get along and can fill the roles, or else it could lead to a negative place quickly. So I felt his personality would complement Charles and myself. So that's the business decision. The second decision was his work ethic, how he treats his players, the passion and what he wants to give to players, sometimes too much, just the amount of work he puts into his team and his family. That was the second reason why I thought he would be a great fit. And you could always become a better coach. There's not the best. Mr. Hastings, you've been with him on, yep. Coach Hastings. Sure. He's proven to do a lot of things. Terry's not there yet, but he can be one day, and we could all learn. So those 2 reasons are why I brought him to Terry. I brought him to Charles. Charles made the final say and approved it. And that's why I thought of his personality for it to be a good fit.
Wow. And I did have a chance to talk to Terry. We talked to him together. AJ talked to him, and once, obviously felt very comfortable with Terry, but then getting him out here to our pre-draft camp, and then just kind of going full time. The guy's all in, work ethic, elite work ethic, cares about what he's doing. Just in a short period of time, you can see he's a difference maker, and he's the right hire. AJ did a great job. He's puts things a little lightly in his situation, but it was a great hire on AJ's part to bring him into the fold, because I've seen it now in action. I think he's going to be a great fit, and he's really going to help us accomplish the goals and the vision, the mission that we have for the Minnesota Mallards.
All right. Great research done on that. I'm going to give a quick shout out to a couple of our sponsors. Riverside Bike and Skate, Eau Claire's Hockey Headquarters, which is the oldest hockey store in the state of Wisconsin. Buy hockey gear from the people that play and know the game. And don't forget about their bicycle sales and service, as well as your paddle sports center for kayaks and canoes. And Raleigh's Coach Club in Altoona, Wisconsin, located across the street from the Altoona Ice Center on Spooner Avenue, which has been a staple in the Altoona community for decades, providing support and sponsorship for youth and adult sports, including Mogi and I in our Old Man's Hockey League. Raleigh's has your favorite beverage ready and your favorite team on the screen. Mogi.
Well, guys, this is going to be a long answer. Okay, I'm thinking it's going to be a long answer. So
circle that one.
I combined 2 of them. All right, so. How does one go about establishing a new NAHL franchise, North American Hockey League franchise, and how long did the process take from start to finish?
We can shorten our answers, but I mean,
you don't have to.
I kind of explained that in the previous question. I mean, I think AJ mentioned, the league and the opportunities, the benefits of the league. I kind of stepped in. I contacted Mark. Both AJ and myself talked to Mark Frankenfield. He's the commissioner, longtime commissioner for the North American Hockey League. Great guy. And so talked to him, and he said the first step would be filling out the application. So it was an extensive application. There was quite a bit to it. So I went ahead and filled that out, and that's what kind of kicked off the process. as far as our process of getting into the league. And then from there, it was number of obviously conversations with Mark and him getting comfortable with who we were. And, he already knew AJ and already had experience with him. So I think that right there gave it instant credibility for myself, just because AJ had past experiences with the North American Hockey League. So that's what the process, that's how it started. And then once we got it going, like I said, there was those conversations. We then went into meeting with the executive board, and then we had a meeting with the entire, every owner within the North American Hockey League. So it was a process to kind of get going and get up and, and kind of prove that we were who we said we were, and we should get a team. But then it really, Mark was trying to make it work with, would they want to have an odd number team in that division? How will that look like? So I think Mark was excited about us, but, it kind of dragged on a bit just because he was trying to figure out a path to getting us that team. And there just wasn't, and it ended up not, there wasn't a path, even though we worked for 7-8 months. So that long and short of it, that's what it was. And that's the process. It's fairly straightforward process. And then once you kind of get through that, then it's just trying to find a path, not only for, do they like us, but do they want to have, where do they want to put you, essentially?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's just the application process, bunch of presentations, lots of conversations. And then, every division has a chairman and they're kind of their own board. They have votes and stuff, but it does seem through the process that the process is the same, but it's still individualistic on where you can land. We were pushed to maybe buying existing ones, maybe, he brought up Watertown and we were like, we'd rather do it local. So it is definitely, I think, an individualistic process, but the documentation is similar to anybody that wants a franchise.
And Mark liked us and thought highly enough, of us. He was showing us some other teams that may be for sale that we could acquire. I went to, I was very close to buying an existing team a few states away, and I was, an inch away from making that happen. It just some of the kind of the things that we were committing to within the purchase agreement were kind of moving around a little bit, and it just didn't feel right. And the Lord always doesn't give you more than you can handle, and kind of works in mysterious ways. So I felt in that situation it was a good decision at not buying that existing team. And then lo and behold, Mark contacted us here this spring, contacted me and said, hey, you want to look at this other existing team because they might be looking at, moving in a different direction. So I called him. I had the call. But then I just told Mark, I said, look, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be a new franchise. And that's when Watertown was just kind of getting everything kind of I's dotted, T's crossed. So the timing was perfect. And I think that's why it was so fast, because I felt they wanted to have that 8th team in the Central Division. I was already approved. We hadn't talked for a number of months, but when that came about and Mark verified that, yep, we could get a new franchise, that was the best way for us to go, because then we are starting it from scratch and we could put our stamp on it versus inheriting from someone else and then having to, kind of make some decisions and do some things based on how our vision is and what our plan is. So I think there was some twists and turns in this, definitely. And it took probably, I wouldn't say it's fully a 2-year for us. It was maybe a little more than a year and a half, but it still took time. And that's what I say is it's got to be right on the ownership side. It's got to be the right for the league. It's got to make sense. And so that's kind of our experience. And that was our journey through this process. But, it's been fun so far getting it. There's a lot of little minutia and a lot of things to execute with the team. More than I think, new owners will realize, if you want to do it at the level we want to do things, it's different. I mean, it depends on the owner and what they want to do with the club. For us, it's up here. And that's why we've continued everything we do, whether from the logo to the brand to the, the type of players we're looking for, we're really kind of putting all our effort into it.
Let's talk about the team itself for a second.
We have questions about all of those things that you just said.
We do now. So let's look at, you guys just had the draft. I think it was June 12th. Yeah. So I've got a 3-part question here. That is, do you have scouts that were scouting these guys? If so, where are you looking? And for the draft, is it like the NHL where you can pick a couple players from each team, who let them out on waivers?
Like expansion draft?
Yeah, like an expansion draft, or do you have to get all your guys out of the draft? How does that whole system work?
Go ahead.
Great question. Well, I would love future thing to have another one of these to educate families and actually advise, all right, and answer this in a whole other meeting, for the parent, all right, about how it works, because that's a great question. And the hockey players have to know how it works because it's blind. A lot of people are blind. So long story short, the answer is we're a brand new organization, so we'll never be in this situation again. So the rules we were given by the league and the player retention that we were given by the league will never happen again. Because after year one, we're an existing organization with returning players. We are now operating the same way as any other team for the rest of our life. So for a new organization, what our way of retaining players was we were given 18 tenders. A tender is like a signed contract agreement between the player and the organization where if you sign this, you're ours. You can't go anywhere else. You're protected in our league. Okay. Now other leagues, there's different meanings for that tender. So that's what I said in other podcasts. I'll get into that another time if you want me to be a guest. I'm passionate on giving them accurate information even without the Mallards. So that's that. We were also given X amount of draft picks based on us being eligible for trades. So once a certain date came, which is usually midnight after the Robertson Cup championship game, trades open up. So you can now trade leading up to the draft. And they granted the three new organizations, us, Watertown, and Elmira, the ability to jump into the trade class and trade with teams. So we actually made 2 trades, which now changed how many draft picks we get. Because coming into the league, we have 31 players we were able to retain when the draft concluded. 18 of which were tenders, the rest were draft picks. So when we make trades, your draft picks decrease to equate to that number of 31. So how we did it was, and this is something we're echoing to the parent, it's not a secret. I educated Charles and talked to Terry that this league is primarily an older league, unlike the USHL or some other leagues. Yeah. And since we were technically approved 4 months before the season, we figured the best way to be a ready now and playoff ready team is to probably try to go out and get some older experienced players from other junior leagues, or, an older 05 that just graduated high school that has 2 years of eligibility. Some kids are 06 and graduated. Some kids are 05, just a little bit older, might be a little bit physically and mentally more ready, even though they're in the same class. So our objective was, let's try to get at least more than 50% of our roster older kids to be ready this year. Then let's go out and get some younger kids that are for the future but can be in the lineup. And that's how we feel, and anything can happen, our recruiting was. So that was our goal. To start, it was a very small army. It was just me and Terry and then some trustworthy people that were off the books, not our scouts, just people that we trusted. Charles knew some people that he brought to us as well. So I would like to say it was just an army of 3 to build our team. And I feel it was pretty good, even though it was a lot. But I told Charles, I said, it's really important to be hands-on and do it ourselves in year one and not just rely on some scouts or referrals and really do our homework, and whether we hit a home run or not. So that's how we put the team together. Since then, we have now been hiring scouts and staff. We're going to be announcing our assistant coach here, in the next week or two. You know what I mean? Then, and then the last part of your question is, based on eligibility and rules, I'm not going to get into that, we're able to draft kids strategically, or tender kids strategically based on age and where they play. And based on those rules that we can and cannot control, that's how we target players that we feel we can play. That can play for us.
So with that team of 31, do you have to pare that down by a certain date? And if so, what's that number and how do you do it?
Great question. Yes. So the number is going to go to, there was just head coaches meetings. So Terry just forwarded me the new documents. I didn't read them yet. So on September 1st, that 31 list has to go to 25 or 27 players by September 1. Now, teams are allowed to bring in more guys to report. So you can bring 30 guys, but again, for the parent and player, just know that if you're one of the 30 guys, there's a chance you're not on a protected list when you report. The Mallards are going to tell you if you are or not. So you're going to know if you're protected or not reporting, and then that's up to you to report. So with that said, once September 1st comes, the season's kind of going, right? And then there's the lists get shrunken down to 25 by October 1st. And then throughout the season, you're able to manipulate the list, move, trade, all that. But that's another, that's a whole other
And
story.
you're putting, I mean, that's AJ again is kind of being pretty humble here. He has a lot of connections, knows a lot of people. Terry obviously did as well. So with all their, trusted advisors really that they reached out to, I really just handed that off to AJ. AJ and Terry put in a lot of time in that initial build. And so I've done a great job. So, I mean, it's kind of, as I was focusing on some of the business things of kind of laying the foundation, they were taking care of our team, and I threw a couple of things in there, but mostly it was AJ and Terry doing the work. And so it was, that's where I feel it's a blessing because of the effort they were able to put in and do and get us situated, because preparation equals separation, and you have to prepare. And that all's did with AJ and Terry was advance that quickly so we could do that. With the wrong people, we might not be there.
Right. And I want to say this, it's when junior hockey, there's owners and they're successful and they have a level of success at working with people. So I want to say Charles was very good at not telling us what to do, because that is the biggest head bumping for owners and coaches is when, is building your team. It's an emotional competitive space. So I thanked him a lot, and I'm thanking him to the world that he really did leave us alone. And we had spreadsheets and everything that he could see at any time. Yeah. Just because transparency in business or anything is important. And I just want to say that in junior hockey, when you do more of these podcasts and you learn the personalities, that's an example of the personalities have to work. Yeah. So he trusted us to just, do our job, and it meant a lot to us. And we feel we had some, relative success, but we'll see when they hit the ice.
So we haven't talked about where you're going to be and who you are. So we did mention the Mallards, okay, but you're going to be based in Forest Lake, Minnesota. So how did you land on Forest Lake as your home site, and where did the Mallards moniker come from?
That was a lead that you got.
I'll talk about the location. Because of my time in the youth rinks and then the Magicians, I was aware of, what rinks would be a cool setup for a junior team in the North American League. I happened to see the Forest Lake rink last year a couple times. I was like, wow, this is a hidden gem. And it's beautiful. And you guys will relate to this, we got to give him credit, is Mike Elin. That's how you pronounce it, right? He's going to kill me if Mike Elin is the manager of the rink. He's also the NCAA Division III ref coordinator. So I bring him up because he's a hockey guy running a rink. So it's clean. The flow of the locker rooms, what is set up, the little details that some people might miss. I was like, man, he's doing a great job here. This would be a great place for a junior team. Not knowing the Mallards would ever come here. So with that said, there's also boundary rules and radius rules for teams. So there's certain rinks here, which are a lot, and very few windows of the Twin Cities where if we said we were going to do this, we made a decision, let's be in the Twin Cities, that we could go. We actually were not allowed to go to Forest Lake, and we have to give them kudos. Yep. St. Cloud, Mark Frankenfeld called them. We were in their 75-mile direct line radius. Yeah. St. Cloud.
As a crow flies. It's not driving.
Right.
It's as crow
So
flies.
you put the dot there and you go out 75.
So the owner,
we're in the mid-60s.
Yeah, and they approved us. So if St. Cloud said no, and it just came down to the owners, not even the commissioner, if they said no, we don't want them there, simple as that, we're not there.
Yeah.
We're not
there. Because there was another location, I won't bring them up, that was 1 mile. 1 mile. This is where the podcast gets good now. 1 mile. All right. From the location. And all right. And I'm just going to tell you, it's around where we live. And they said no. So it led us to another place, which was 15 miles in, and St. Cloud said yes. So Chris and his brother, thank you for that one. And that's how we landed there. I did not think of the name. Charles, go ahead. That's the first part.
Okay. Yeah, I also want to thank Chris and his brother as well, because
Chris and his brother, the owners of St. Cloud.
Yeah,
nice.
St. Cloud
nice.
Norseman, run a good operation up there. And without their blessing, the Mallards and Forest Lake wouldn't have been a thing. So want to acknowledge them and say
it came down to their vote.
So they were kind enough to do that, and so from there it was really, I've got a nonprofit. I mentioned before we were talking before the meeting, I've partnered with the National Christian Foundation and have a donor fund for my wife and I and the kids for charitable giving. And so one of the things we want to do, besides just writing checks and supporting the organizations we believe in, it's also doing something within the family that we're passionate about, that the kids they don't want to do business together. How business is with friends and family. But if they don't want to do business together, this would something be, you pray together, you stay together. This is something they can do forever, when my wife and I are gone. And so it was really something, put a lot of time in setting that up. And the guys over at the National Christian Foundation have been fantastic. And David Ragland is my advisor that I work with over there. But, that really, my vision for that is to really set up a 501c3 nonprofit, which I did last year, and now we're just waiting to get the IRS designation for that. But we want to have different attractions within the outdoor space to be able to really connect with people. And the outdoors is a special place and a great place to connect with people. So my vision on that is to create a fish farm with actual fishing lakes in the shape of fish. So a little walleye, little bass, little panfish. We're also going to have, and we've already got a purchase. It just happened. The Lord works in mysterious ways. Again, it just so happens there's a successful guy in Hudson that owns a nice manufacturing company. He built a deer farm, hunting preserve 13, 14 years ago, Jim. And so Jim didn't expect to see me come along, but, thought, geez, I can sell to Charles and Charles can kind of take it to the next level and execute his vision. So we'll have a deer farm where we can bring kids out, show them how that deer farm works. But then we have a hunting preserve where we can our plan is to bring some high rollers into a really A+ hunting lodge that Jim has established there and be able to bring people hunting. It's a canned hunt, a high fenced hunt, but again, that's why I brought Scott Kirkpatrick back to add into that experience and that from a hunting perspective, so then we can bring kids out and bring them on a hunting trip or a hunting experience. So again, these are the types of things we're doing in the outdoors and having these different attractions. And then every attraction is going to have its own parable book related back to Bible verses. So that's really our key performance indicator. Our KPI is being able to hand out these booklets, whether it's fishing related, hunting related, or what have you. We can hand these booklets out to people, and maybe it does the same thing it did for me in making a promise, having a relationship with the Lord, and making a promise to give back at some point. Sure. So having said that, that's where, we looked at the first time around, we were looking at the Wisconsin whitetail. Because I wanted
for a name,
yeah. And we wanted that to be
just gave away where our possible first location may have been. I'm going to let these guys look into it.
I'm not going to tell them that, but no, we were really excited. I mean, obviously, I love to hunt whitetails. My boys, us, we spent a lot of time doing it, and it was just that was a name that was near to dear with us. So again, when we had to go over to Minnesota, it had to be something outdoorsy. So, that's where the Mallards came about and ended up going with the Minnesota Mallards. And then I've got a friend that's
So you and your family thought of the name. That's how you thought of the name. Yeah. And I want to say this too, like, we are very blessed to be in Forest Lake, and it's a better situation than where we thought we were going to go. So I just want the Forest Lake community to know that, Mike, the manager, know that, and it worked out for the right reasons.
The school board, I mean, they were all aboard. I did a little dog and pony show.
We have no
with
limitations there.
With the school board a couple of weeks ago, they were, everyone's excited about us. So it couldn't have really been, again, another blessing. Yeah. It couldn't have been a better setup for us. It was move-in ready. Right. The things that Mike is willing to do to help us be successful, the school board, the school, because the rink sits on school grounds, just the community so far to this point. It's really a blessing. It's been fantastic. So, but that's how we came up with the Minnesota Mallards. And I've got a friend that is in the outdoor space, owns an outdoor business, and he had a guy that does all his design. And so David actually we found a logo, a whitetail logo, and David was the guy that actually had drawn that one up. So I went back to David to have him draw the Mallards. So I was actually out in Colorado at the time when when David started actually doing the initial drawings and designing the Mad Mal, I call him. That's his nickname. Mad Mal is getting created here. And currently we have the mascot. Mad Mal's going to come to life here. So he'll be home and he'll be in Forest Lake at the end of August. There's another little tidbit for you.
Oh, I love it.
All right, we're going to shout out our two other sponsors for the podcast. Thanks to our friends at Market and Johnson, longtime supporters of the great game of hockey in our youth throughout the Chippewa Valley region. And Northwoods Therapy Associates take pride in being your choice for physical therapy in the Chippewa Valley since 1981. Northwoods Physical Therapy is a clinic where you can receive the care you deserve, and they treat you like family.
AJ, when you were doing the draft and signing these 18 tenders, what are you looking for in the player to play for the Mallards?
Good question. So for year one and building a new organization, we were looking for all types of players that will probably never have to do again. So the mindset was a little different than my previous experiences. So we were looking for players that had success at other junior leagues. That even though they're not playing in our league, that they were a little bit older and more experienced and were still hungry and not settled to stay in that league and were willing to move up to the North American League and give a new organization a chance. So that was the first one was, are they willing and committed and love the game to make the decision to leave, going to be a 20-year-old man and go into a brand new situation, and for 1 year or only 2 years? That's a pretty big decision. And that shows commitment for athletes. So that's number one. Number two is when you recruit, I don't care what anyone says, unless you only need 2 guys, we couldn't be as selective as we want. So did we want to have a holistic team of skill, tough guys, offensive defensemen, starting goalie, backup goalie, whatever? Of course. But based on who's available and who shows us the love back, we wanted to make sure that, the committed athlete was number one, even if we felt we were going to get more of this kind of a player. Let's just run with the player that wants to be a Mallard. And then does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we wanted to really make sure that was important. So having success and willing to take a risk at another league, it was good. Now for the younger players, some of them that graduated high school, or we will have 1 or 2 players that are seniors in high school playing, are they just junior ready? And are they going to be happy to play for us, not being too far away from home? So our younger players that are coming in are primarily local Wisconsin and Minnesota kids. And that was also strategic, where they're in demand by other teams, but we got them because we're local. They don't have to change their lifestyle that much, and their skill can compete with that 04, even if you're an 06 or 07. They just have to mentally develop a little bit more for the future for us, or for we develop them now for something else. So looking for the players, the second part is we want to have every kind of forward, and may the best man win. Offensive forwards, mean forwards, skilled forwards, playmakers, every kind. Defensively, big, mean, heavy guys primarily. We didn't go after a lot of offensive D-men because here's the facts. A lot of them are taken. That's a very important position in hockey right now. And the best ones are somewhere else or already taken. So we are going after heavy defensive guys that could protect the blue line for a first year team. And then very good goalies. I was a goalie. So 2 very strong goaltenders. So that's kind of the generic way we built our forwards, defense, and goaltending spots.
So kind of build from the back out.
Yeah, we wanted to really make sure our blue line and defense, can defend, and then the offense can come.
Because like
correct,
JC would say, the defensive zone's the most important zone anyways, because he's a defenseman, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, starts with the D, baby.
Starts with the D.
Right.
First pass out.
Right. And the North American League has a lot of these statistics. Being an older league and being coached by a lot of former pro guys, especially in the Southern Division or Central Division, your D zone has to be your best asset, not your offensive zone entries that are fancy like the NHL right now. It's got to be your D zone, and then special teams. That seems to be a consistent trend. So I tried to educate Charles and Terry. Hey, let's start there. And then the creativity we could maybe teach or can come,
I'm sorry, JC.
You mentioned that most of the kids are from the local area, but do you have any kids that are going to have to live with billet families, and how do you set that up?
Yeah, I may have misspoke. Most of them, actually about half, maybe even more, are not from this area for year one. We do have a vision that in the future, the majority of our roster is going to be, Minnesota, Wisconsin kids, primarily Minnesota and Wisconsin kids. That is our vision. We do want to dominate our town and give kids the opportunity. We will not exile Europeans and Canadians and people from the east, west, south of the United States. If you're a good enough player to be here, no matter where you're from, you're going to be here. But there's hundreds of thousands of hockey players here. Data has shown that you can win with a team of 15 Minnesota kids. Okay. So we do want to be a destination for local players primarily. So in year one though, because we're going after some older kids, they might be from other areas. So we envision about 50 to 70% of our team will need billet families.
And how do you set that up? Do they volunteer, or do you reach out to the community? How's that set up?
Both. So, however kind of, campaign or getting the word out through social media platforms, emails, word of mouth, that's what we're currently doing right now. One thing to mention is the Forest Lake Hockey Association and the high school teams play out of Forest Lake. I have a relationship with the board. So through them, we're going to use a voice to the families there to get involved. For billets. So, people have reached out to us and I've reached out to people, and you just have to put the work in to find the families. And, the families have background checks. They know that coming into it. They know that coming into it. Most of them have kids that play hockey, and, it's a very understood, environment. So that's how it works.
So you've had some time with the kids already. You've had some camps, right?
One camp. Yeah.
Okay. One camp. Tell us, from the rest of the summer, we're here at the beginning of July when we're talking to you folks. From now until when the season starts, how many more times will you have camps? And how excited are you to get that down to that number that you need and play those first games? You guys just have to be chomping at the bit right now.
Yeah. We're going to have one more camp. It's called the main camp. Usually when a team defines a camp, main camp, that's their final camp. And that's where they make a lot of selections out of that. We are trying to have, several teams there and make it as competitive as possible. There's no returning players. It's a wide open slate. So we are putting in a ton of time to try to get everyone there. Yeah. We do have 31 players that are ours, but they still have to earn it. So that's something that they have been told. And that's something that's important for families, that with every thank you, there's a responsibility. We give you a tender, you sign it, your work starts. So it's now your responsibility to make our team and show us how bad that you want it, that we did well here. Right. So we want to have as competitive as possible, our camp, and find the best players. Our asset players, draft picks and tenders, we're very confident in their ability to play here. But we do know, and they should know that, everything has to be earned, and it's a competitive space, but they're going to have the opportunity to do that and then report in the fall.
And we did see things in these, these tenders, these draft picks. But again, just like anything else, if you look at the NHL all the way down, typically, and Terry mentioned this, you're looking at 30, 40, 45% maybe of the kids that you draft or tender are going to make the team. The others won't. So you don't know how motivated someone's coming to, that you've got. So that's why when AJ says make it most competitive, you just want to bring all those players, whether you drafted them, whether you tendered them, but also good players that can challenge everyone. And that's something that's out there. You gotta be training, you gotta be ready. And that's just part of building that mantra as we come into this. We have high expectations for ourselves and for our potential players that are going to be on this team. We want to build a winning culture, a winning team, and we want to make sure they're winning both at an individual level, but on a team level and a culture level.
When you start this team, obviously the goal is to come out with a record with no losses. But realistically, coming into this season, I know. I mean, doesn't every team want that?
Right. Every team. Yeah,
every team wants that.
You're absolutely right.
But realistically, as a brand new team, are you setting goals for yourself that you want a 500 record? Do you want a 750 record? Do you want a 330 record? Do you even put that on yourself to start the season?
Well, Charles is the owner. And he's presented incentives to his staff, like, hey, based on the player's success, moving on to other leagues or college, and based on our team's success, hey, here's some incentives, which is very common and also generous because he didn't have to do that. I'm just going to say it right now. With the Magicians, my 3 other business partners, all right, I'll put it on record. There were never incentives. All right, so it's very good that that's a very cool thing. So, from my point of view, and I feel Charles has respected it, is we are clearly all about the development first and then the championship second. But we are recruiting and trying to set the tempo so we give them a platform to make the playoffs. I told Charles, I think it'll be a really cool success based on your vision, but I think selfishly, what do you think? Being a new franchise, everyone who expects you to be in rebuild mode or just have an average year, and people just accept to win 20 or less games in a 60-game season. If we can be over 500 is always good, and a playoff team in year one, that's a huge success. Yeah. So in my mind, and talking to Terry, forget wins, losses, points, this and that. If we could be a playoff team in year one, that's what we want to be. Okay. And one thing I'll say this, and I'll let Charles talk, is he's never once said, I want you to win the Robertson Cup, or I want you to make playoffs, or you have to go over 500. He's been a part of the conversations. It's more been me to say, hey, we want to develop these guys, but we also, winning is a part of life, and people don't talk about it enough. So let's be a playoff team right away. And he's supported that. So I think that's all I'll tee off on what he thinks. Okay. But one of your questions is who has the final say. So let's see.
Yeah, here we go.
There you go.
Here's where the buck stops.
There you go.
No, I mean, we're on the same page. I guess, like I said earlier in the conversation, when I put my mind to something, it usually I have success. It doesn't really matter what it is. And so that's kind of, as I'm going to this, I think in my mind, based on what I've experienced, if we have athletes that come here and they're wide open to learning and growing, and we provide a culture and the right coaches and the right culture and the right things in place, and we pour ourselves into them, and we develop these kids, and we develop our staff, and we develop our team, right? I feel like success is going to follow.
I like that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
We want to back it up. People talk like that, but you got to really back it up.
And I'm going, it's like, that's the thing we've talked about. I don't care. We have the ice from in the, early morning until 2 p.m. Yes, we'll do our practice, but there's going to be video sessions. There's going to be extra individual stick handling, this, that, the next thing. Or, it's not, if you're coming here, you better be ready to work. It's not something we're kind of just like a practice, then we're, shutting her down. We're going to do everything we can to be the best we can the first year and each and every year after that. So I have high expectations. Yeah, it'd be great to win it all, or it'd be great to make the playoffs. The first and foremost is we must set our brand, we must set our culture, and we must set the expectations of what we want, because great leaders set clear expectations, both from an ownership and GM and coaches. So we're going to go to work, and we're going to work hard. We're going to put a lot of effort, both the players and us, in ownership, staff, coaches into this team, and we'll see where that leaves us. I think based on my prior experience, I think we're going to be in a good spot.
I'm excited. This sounds so fun. I mean, I can't wait for August to hit, and then you guys will be in Blaine at the Super Rink for the big showcase, right?
Yeah.
Might have to make a trip over there, JC.
Might have to happen. I like
Tell
that.
us. We'll take care of you.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah.
AJ, I've got one last question. It's directed at you. Prior to the mics getting turned on, we were standing outside, and you talked about a group of kids that you coached in the youth levels. One of your favorite teams you ever coached.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. Who did you have on the team, and what was special about it?
Yeah. So, it was the team was the Minnesota Icemen AAA hockey program, and the birth year of the boy players. We had girls and boys teams. The boy players were born in 1999. So Charles is well familiar with that. So, as everybody knows in our market and Wisconsin, AAA in Minnesota and Wisconsin is different than the other 48 states in the country. And it happens in the spring and summer, independent fun teams that have no rules, and we design our own culture. So I got involved with that AAA program, which I ended up buying with a former business partner. And the fun part about that team was, the personalities and the people on the team, as you mentioned. So, the players on that team have gone off and had huge success in a lot of areas of hockey. And I know they will in life as well, because the amount of people they're turning into. Some names are Dylan Sandberg, Winnipeg Jets, Ryan Sandelin, Scott Sandelin's son, Ryan, who's playing professional hockey and up and down in the American League in the NHL. Marco Reifenberger, who eventually played for me with the Magicians. He's been a captain at every level he's been at. And he's at Mercyhurst College right now. And then he just signed East Coast Hockey League. So now he's in pro hockey. Roman Ashawn played for Wisconsin. He was that little mean, gritty Marchand type guy.
Yeah.
Playing in the
Tony
American
Granato
Hockey
loved
League. Yeah, playing. I'm going to keep going here. And then you have Ryan Paling. So he was a part of the three brothers from Lakeville North. His two twin brothers went to St. Cloud, and then Ryan was the baby brother that could kick both of their butts. And he also went to St. Cloud, played for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was on a line with Crosby a couple times, and I was texting him, and it was awesome. He is now with the Philadelphia Flyers. Who's also with the Philadelphia Flyers. Noah Cates, Stillwater, Minnesota, 99. His teammate, those guys together. And I could keep going. I know you've come across some of these players too on your podcast, which is awesome, and possibly in the future. So that team was special because at the time you saw something there. Oh, and I got to say this, Mikey Anderson, Los Angeles Kings. His dad, Jerry, is the reason why those players are there, not me. I was just a young coach in my 20s that thought I was cool and had a personality, and the kids just, were attracted to me. But his dad, Jerry, and so Mikey Anderson, who played at Hill, UMD, and now for the Los Angeles Kings, he's Drew Doughty's D partner. He was an influencer to help me get those players and then just be a supporter. He was my assistant coach. So I wanted to mention the Anderson family. Anyway, great personalities, great kids. I can go on. They all ended up playing college hockey. Every single kid on that team ended up playing college hockey or doing something good, getting to college or getting involved in their parents' business or creating a business. So it was a special team, lots of memories, stayed in touch with a lot of them. And it's just been really cool to see them go. Now, the last thing I'd say, I swear that team got me jobs because of the people that were involved, how good they were. We would go to these tournaments around the country because we were crazy at the time and win, And also, another personality, Mike Yo's son, Kyler. He played on that team too. So I would have Scott Sandelin, Mike Yo, and then a few other guys that coached the game sitting around, in the hotel bar or something, talking hockey. And again, I'm in a situation where I'm just learning, so Thank you for ending with that question. Cause it definitely, it allowed me to branch off and then get involved and meet people like Charles, because my business partner at the time knew Charles before me. And then that's how I trained Charles' son. So it all comes together. So that team was a fun, special time in my life.
The hockey community.
Very amazing.
For sure.
I just, Just listening to you guys today, your vision and your support for these guys is just amazing. You got the right guy as a GM. I mean, I think you're selling yourself a little short saying, "Oh, I just was lucky. I was young." It's like you don't have the success that you've had throughout the years by being lucky. Sorry, it just doesn't happen. You're a grinder, you can tell, and grinders get where they need to go. Come hell or high water.
Apparently.
They do. So, yeah, thanks, you guys, and we wish you nothing but great success this year with the Mallards.
I appreciate that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to leave a review, thumbs up. It really helps Mogi and I stay in the game. Mog?
Again, a big thanks to the Minnesota Mallards owner, Charles Bailey, and the GM, AJ Bucchino, as well as you folks, our faithful listeners. Please remember to visit our sponsors, Riverside Bike and Skate, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Raleigh's Coach Club, Northwoods Therapy Associates, and Market & Johnson. Please follow us on your favorite social media platforms. And remember, folks, until next time, keep your head on a swivel and stay on your inside edges.